Welcome back to Deconstructing DJG. I am DJG. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. I haven't been doing as many reactions to fundies. I plan to pick that back up. I have had Twitter on my phone since Twitter started, but I've never really been on Twitter that much. And when Elon Musk bought it, I really thought, now's the time I should delete my account. But then very shortly thereafter, he made it so that you have to have an account in order to see tweets. And I was like, no, we're going to hang on to that because there's a handful of fundies that post almost exclusively on Twitter. I'm not calling it X, it's Twitter. If Elon is going to dead name his child, I'm going to dead name his media baby. So, Matt Walsh is one of these fundies that is almost exclusively on Twitter because he keeps getting platformed off of other platforms. He always gets back on, he just makes this big stink about it because he does things that breach terms of service, dude. He has his show that's on the Daily Wire, and rather than posting it to YouTube, he puts it on Twitter because that's totally the right forum for long form videos. Whatever. I saw that his most recent episode was, at least in part, about polyamory. Now, a little background about me. I have been polyamorous for about 22 years at this point. I have had a number of different polycule arrangements. I currently consider myself part of a platonic polycule. I am not romantically or sexually connected with anyone else in the polycule, but all but like one person in the house is polyamorous, and we have very tight-knit relationships, and some of those definitely feel like they go more intimate emotionally. That vulnerability is there at a level that most friendships don't have, and I kind of elevate it a little bit, I guess, to a queer platonic relationship. I've seen a lot of ways that work. I've seen a lot of ways that don't work. I have given a lot of advice in recent years based on the successes and the opportunities to learn that I have had over the last 22 years. I have been married for the vast majority of that time. It's just been the last, 4.5 years now that I have been single. And gosh, I watched a few minutes of this Matt Walsh thing already, and he truly does not understand. Now, in his case, I have a feeling that is primarily actual ignorance, not the intentional ignorance that he has on some of his other pet topics like abortion and gays and transgender people and stuff like that. He absolutely has intentional ignorance on those things. But I think polyamory is one of those things that just isn't on his radar enough for him to be curious about it, to be exposed to any polyamorous media that might help him understand. That said, he did watch some polyamorous TikTokers and stuff like that talking about their relationships, and he absolutely intentionally misunderstands what they are saying and what they are broadcasting because it doesn't fit his whole predetermined package of what everyone is supposed to be. Everyone is supposed to be cis, straight, monogamous, and his specific type of Christ follower, because let us not forget, Matt Walsh is pro-Inquisition. He has publicly stated, unironically, that he would love to see a new Catholic Inquisition in the United States. So he's very, very entrenched in this idea that these quote unquote God-given gender roles, societal roles, etc., are maxims that must be adhered to. They are not optional, they are required. And anything that does not fit in that neat little box is not just deviant, it's not just different, it is not just wrong, it's evil, it's sinful, it's causing the downfall of society. And so let's get into his spiel on polyamory.
About 5 years ago, a British TV show called Love Don't Judge featured a glowing profile of 5 people, 1 woman and 4 men, who were in a polyamorous relationship with each other. And clips from the episode went viral, and the 5 lovebirds quickly became the faces of polyamory. And they are interesting faces indeed. Watch.
This is Tori. She fell in love with Travis and Ethan and Mark and Chris. Their 4-way relationship is working wonders for them.
The relationship could best be described by having Tori as the hub and all of us are spokes on a giant wheel.
But not everyone understands the dynamic.
I was like, oh, you're kidding, that you're joking.
How will this poly relationship cope with a further addition to the family?
Yes, how will they all cope with?
He's going to make a not so thinly veiled diss about the appearance of the people in this polycule while he looks like that. Sir. So, yes, there are people who are not conventionally attractive who are in polyamory. And surprise, surprise, there's people who are not conventionally attractive who are in monogamy. Just saying. It's really kind of gross the way that he, here and at other points, acts as the fact that the people who are in these relationships are not conventionally attractive is somehow a problem. And everybody likes what they like. He obviously loves the way that his wife looks. But let's not stoop to these lowest common denominator things. Like, if you have a problem with polyamory, talk about the relationship structures, talk about the relationship issues. Don't talk about, well, I don't find this person attractive, so therefore polyamory is weird. I've seen similar stuff happen with, like, butch lesbians, where guys are like, you know, being gay is weird, being lesbian is weird, because how could you ever be attracted to that, and point to a butch lesbian? It's just gross. Like, come on, people. You can do better. The bar is in hell with Matt Walsh, but one would think he could at least clear that one.
The new addition to the family? Well, unfortunately, we got an answer to that question rather quickly, and the answer is horrific. Only 5 weeks after the baby was born, the baby you just heard about there, Ethan Balcom, one of the 5 musketeers, was arrested for abusing the infant so viciously that she had severe injuries to her ribs, lungs, limbs, internal organs, and had several brain bleeds as well. Balcom reportedly told police that he injured the baby because he was frustrated that she was preventing him from sleeping.
Okay, this is absolutely horrific, and I really hope that justice is served in this case, because that is utterly unacceptable. I don't care what kind of family you've got that you're bringing children into, you don't do that. But Matt's point for bringing this up is to imply that the reason why this horrific thing happened was because of polyamory. This is the same thing that he does anytime there is a person of color who commits a mass shooting. This is the same thing he does whenever a queer or trans person is caught in sexual assault. You know, he always picks these to be able to say, see, This thing that I don't like is wrong because someone who is part of that community did something horrific and illegal. And yet, this is the man who thinks that 15 and 16-year-old girls should be married off ASAP because they're in prime fertility? Sir, really? There is absolutely no world where he is a good judge of character. This is something that a lot of conservative commentators, politicians, etc. will do to be able to say, hey, we shouldn't let gay people adopt because this gay person over here did something horrible to a child. As if them being gay makes them predisposed to doing something like that. And that's just not the case. In almost every situation that they have tried to bring up like this, the aberrant group of people offend in the, given sector of justice, offend at a lower rate than cis, straight, white, monogamous people. So it just does not follow that there is this heightened propensity for violence and other awful things in people who are from what he would call a deviant group. So it is pushing this rhetoric forward that these people are dangerous. They're not just weird, they're not just ugly, they're dangerous.
So it turns out that the man who volunteered to be a part of this grotesque, unstable, and dysfunctional polygamous relationship is also himself a grotesque, unstable, and dysfunctional person, which should come as no surprise. But
see, exactly. Because he is part of this minority group that I don't like, therefore, it is no surprise that he was a horrible person. And that just doesn't follow. Like, if you want to look at violence against children, especially sexual violence against children, the people who are most likely to do it are leaders within faith communities. So I believe this is where you would pull out address the plank in your eye before addressing the mote in mine.
it would be a surprise to you if you listen to the media, which has been in the midst of a full court press over the past few days to promote this kind of dysfunction to the masses. First up to the plate was the New York Times with an article about, according to the headline, a polyamorous mom who had a big sexual adventure and found herself. Now, this polyamorous mom has apparently just published a memoir titled More, a memoir of open marriage. Because, needless to say, what the world needs most right now is yet another memoir written by a middle-aged woman about how she embarked on a quest of self-discovery, and the quest involved nothing but, having sex with a bunch of random dudes. That's exactly what we need right now. There's a memoir like this published every 45 minutes or so, and they're all the same. All of these women are interchangeable. Their experiences are as uninteresting as they are unoriginal, and their insights, the little insights they have, are equal parts cliched and bogus.
That is absolutely rich coming from you. You are completely replaceable, interchangeable. Nothing you say is of any particular value. The only reason why you happen to be on my radar is because I have something of a morbid interest in the faith communities that I have left. I also think that his penchant for trying to harm LGBTQ people, it deserves kind of a watchdog. He's not James Dobson. He's not Jerry Falwell. He's not any of these other major high-profile faith leaders. He's just a guy with an internet talk show, I guess, podcast, on a small, far right-wing website. So, truly, he could fall into obscurity pretty easily. But nothing that he says here is not something It is also said by Fox News, by OAN, by Allie Beth Stuckey. There's so many other people who say these exact same things in slightly different words and on slightly different platforms. As the Reverend Jen said in Shiny Happy People, same book, different cover.
Now, next, there was a big piece in USA Today declaring in its opening paragraph, open relationships are having a moment. Polyamory, ethical non-monogamy, and similar terms are becoming a bigger part of our cultural lexicon. But perhaps the most known type of open relationship is swinging, and swingers are having a moment too. Just ask Kylie George, a swinger who chronicles her journey on Swing Talk, a hashtag with more than 2.6 billion views on TikTok. The community also connects via symbols. An upside-down pineapple is the most viral and well-known. George recently married her partner, and the pair were able to celebrate with all of their Swing Talk creator friends and communicate within a Discord group of more than 30,000 members. They plan events, educate, provide resources, and enjoy a safe communal space. Now, you could have probably gone your whole life and been happy not knowing that something called Swing Talk exists, but now you know, for better or worse. And that leads finally to New York Magazine.
So, you're mad that people who are different from you have found ways to create community, to connect with one another, and to share tips, tricks, and resources for this fairly unknown type of life. How is that different from people who give Christian advice? You're still, connecting in communities, whether that be Facebook groups or churches or CRU or YWAM. There's so many examples of this exact same thing happening with Christians. And of course, he would call that, ministries. And unfortunately, because of the tax law in the United States, that actually gets tax exempt status even. So he's got all of his own spaces. So he's got to find people to shit on for having their own spaces, because God forbid anyone who disagrees with him is able to find community.
With its cover story for its latest issue, promising a practical guide to polyamory for, quote, the curious couple. Now, before we read any of the article in this issue of the magazine, we should note the cover of the magazine, which you can see right here. And you can see the words polyamory in big, bold block letters, along with a picture of 4 cats embracing. And it kind of makes you think, why did they choose cats?
Probably because they're cute, and it's random because polycules come in all shapes and sizes, and having a single polycule or couple on the cover would not necessarily get the point across as easily, and nobody can say no to cute kitties. I mean, come on. Now, granted, we know Matt hates cats and dogs. He's not an animal person at all, which is fine, because given the way that he treats adults and his children, I would rather he didn't bring innocent animals into that as well. It's so dumb to get mad about this.
For the cover photo. I mean, there must have been some thought put into this. They must have discussed this at some length, like what's the cover photo going to be for this our big issue about polyamory. And they reviewed all the possible options and decided to go with cats, which is an interesting choice, considering the more obvious choice would be a photo of an actual polyamorous couple. I'm sure they could find plenty of plenty of polyamorous people who are, willing to pose for the picture. After all, these people are not nearly as camera shy as we all wish they were.
Again, with the dig at the physical attractiveness. Seriously, dude. Seriously. This is lowest common denominator stuff. Do better.
But you could see why they didn't go that route. And for one thing, polyamory represents mating habits more often found in animals than in humans. By pushing this on us, they are pushing us to behave like beasts.
No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Behaving like beasts is behaving as though we have a singular push to only copulate in order to procreate. That is putting us down to beasts. He is very pro making women into cattle who are simply there to ensure the birth of future generations. He does not see women as being useful for anything else. He thinks that they are inferior when it comes to anything in the workforce. He thinks that they should all be stay-at-home moms, homeschooling their kids and going to church. Miss me with this bullshit about polyamory being making us into animals. This is a kind of overused line, but so many people who get asked about their polyamorous life have to be like, look, it's not just about the sex. Now, for some people, it absolutely is, but that's because it's not just one thing. And it could be said that some monogamous couples only get married and get together because they're supposed to be fruitful and multiply. That sounds like animal behavior. It also sounds like a choice that someone is making for their life because, we are autonomous human beings who have choices. But if we want to talk about animals here, it is funny that he says that polyamory makes you like an animal. People like him will bring up specifically like LGBTQ people. They're like, oh, no, 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 it's not natural. You don't see that in the animal kingdom, except you do constantly. The fish and frogs who are able to change their sex. You have the bonobos that are notoriously bisexual, polyamorous, and very sexually free. There's so many examples in the animal world of what he would call deviant behavior. But there's also a ton of examples in the animal world about what he would consider correct behavior. So if he's going to say that this makes us like animals, he needs to admit that his view turns women into animals as well. And really turns men into animals as well, because supposedly they cannot contain themselves if a woman is scantily clad. Removing someone's autonomy is definitely trying to make them into an animal or a robot, kind of depending on whatever metaphor you want to use for that. But anywho,
And that could be the message here. But I think more likely they realize that most polycules in real life are a horror to behold. We saw what happened the last time they gave us a face of polyamory, and they don't want to make that mistake again. They'd rather not show you the kinds of people who are actually doing this, so they show you cats instead. Anyway, once we move past the cats,
I would much rather see a picture of a cat than a picture of you, Matt. Just saying.
we're told the story of a married couple named Nick and Sarah, who have chosen the polygamous lifestyle.
Polyamory is not polygamy. Just saying.
And here's what it says right off the bat. Quote, non-monogamy is really just designing the bounds of what we want in our relationship and what we're comfortable with, Nick says. For Nick and Sarah, the relationship design looks like this. Nick and Sarah are married. Sarah has had multiple other committed relationships while married to Nick. Currently, Nick has a girlfriend, Anna, who has a husband, Alex, and Alex has other people with whom he explores his desires. The easiest way to explain all this might be in the love language of most ethically non-monogamous people. Google Calendar. Sarah and Nick share a calendar. Nick and Anna share a calendar. Alex and Anna share a calendar. Sarah and Anna do not share a calendar, but are aware of who has Nick's time on any given day. Same for Nick and Alex. They are Sarah and Nick and Anna and Alex, a modern polycule, living, laughing, loving, and doing a lot of therapy.
That is probably the most accurate thing that he has said in this whole video. The love language of polyamorous people is absolutely Google Calendar. My life would not run, polyamorously or not, if it weren't for Google Calendar. And I'm sure other people have the same thing with their Outlook or whatever Apple calendar is called. Like, calendar apps are important. And it is such a joke in the polyamorous community that, you're part of a polycule when you are sharing your calendar with multiple people and they're sharing their calendar with you. It's definitely the poly love language.
Oh, I bet. Yes, what a joy this must be. If you want a date night with your wife, you have to put it in her Google Calendar and hope she doesn't already have plans with her boyfriend that day. Like that.
But that's the whole point of having the Google Calendar. You can see if she has a date with her other boyfriend. That's literally the whole point. And to mirror this on the monogamous lifestyle that he promotes, you would likely have to do a bit of scheduling with your wife in order to have a date night, because you would need to make sure that she doesn't have a church group or a child in a music class, dance class, sports, whatever, that she has time for a date. It's just a fact of life. People have busy schedules, polyamorous or not. And I don't think that it is weird to have to schedule a date night. Every single monogamous couple that I know that has kids has to schedule these things out far in advance because their schedules are so crazy. That's just how life is, Matt. And it's incredibly disingenuous to say otherwise. I'm guessing that his home experience is that his daughters are not really in extracurricular activities, etc. And more than likely, he has an understanding with his wife that she drop whatever she's doing in order to capitulate to his schedule and his demands, because that's how it comes out, or comes off in a lot of his posts and videos that he's done before. Again, miss me with that bullshit, as if polyamory scheduling is different from the kinds of scheduling that monogamous people do.
That's the idea here. Now, this article in New York Magazine goes on and on for thousands of words. The author and the people she's interviewing are under the impression that their story is an epic, fascinating adventure.
I'm sorry, but people who live different lives are actually interesting. It gets clicks. Like, this doesn't take a media genius to figure out. If you're going to do a news story or an article in a magazine and you want to drive clicks, you're going to do it on something that is different. You're going to do it on something that hasn't already been done a million times. Or if you are doing something that's been done a million times, you're going to do it from a slightly different perspective. That's just how media works. And this dude who's got an online show, podcast, whatever you want to call it, like, how does this not make sense to you? Like, your show is all about people who live lives that are different from you and how much you hate them, how weird they are, how bad and evil they are. Like, you wouldn't do articles and news stories about normal Christian couples. That wouldn't get clicks. You know this. So it's very disingenuous for him to act as though these other news organizations and publications are doing something wildly out of step to have these articles about polyamory.
In reality, it is, again, the same story all of these people, all these other polyamorous groupings are telling. It's the exact same story.
Because we have a lot of common themes.
Sarah, the wife, says stuff like, I was on a journey to reconnect with my body and learn about myself as a sexual being. As we've seen, women like this, they love to talk about their sexual dalliances as journeys, right? As if she's Frodo trekking across Middle Earth, to destroy the ring in Mordor.
Dude, no. You do not get to take Tolkien. Now, if ever there was a queer platonic partnership, it is Samwise and Frodo. Like, yes, it is a journey. Do you know why? Because people like you put forward this narrative that you have to be XYZ. You must fit into this little box. And so trying to discover anything about yourself takes concerted effort. It takes time. It takes therapy. If you are not fulfilled or satisfied with the status quo, there's a lot to try. There's a lot to potentially experience. And it is a journey. I bet if he talked to someone who, he's done this before actually, where he talks to a detransitioner, guarantee you he would be on board with them saying it was a journey to get to their true God-ordained gender and roles. You're disingenuous on every single frickin' front. I get so annoyed that people like him have so many followers and so much reach when he's pushing obviously disingenuous bullshit.
And not just a middle-aged woman having sex with different dudes. And then we're told that Nick, the husband at first, struggled with the whole his wife has sex with other guys thing. If you can imagine, it was a little bit hard at first. Sarah helped him very generously to work through these feelings. And at one point, we're told when Nick was feeling especially jealous, Sarah asked him, "How do you need to feel loved by me?" Which is a pretty good question for a wife to ask her husband or vice versa. The problem is that apparently stop having sex with other guys was not an acceptable answer to that question.
No, there is a concept within polyamory called polyamory under duress, otherwise known as PUD. If someone is not actually into the idea of polyamory, does not actually want to be polyamorous, it is at best coerced consent with it, which is not consent. And so therefore it is not ethical non-monogamy. It's just cheating with extra steps. It's one thing to be like, "Hey, I'm having these feelings. I would like to work through them because I want to be more comfortable with this new arrangement that we're doing." Anytime you have change, it's going to trigger insecurities. It's going to cause you to be jealous. Quite often, first-time parents will run into this, where suddenly the usually male spouse is not getting the same amount of attention and care and whatnot as they used to before the baby gets there. And whether they want to admit it or not, they're effectively jealous of the child to a certain extent. And that's so normal because it is a massive change to your relationship. That makes sense. And yet, that is not something that you want to exist in long term. You don't want to constantly feel jealous of your child. You love your child. And so therefore, you work through those feelings. You talk to your spouse. You get emotionally vulnerable. And you discuss, in this new season of life, how can I show you in a way that matters to you that I love and care about and respect you? And so then you can work on different ways to reconnect in a way that is directly meaningful to that partner who is feeling insecure. And that is exactly the same thing that polyamorous people do, who are enthusiastic about the idea of polyamory, but maybe struggling with certain practical issues. And so when you have people in polyamory, that doesn't mean that we don't feel jealousy. I was one of those people who for a long time said, well, I just don't get jealous. The thing was, I I had the potential for jealousy. I just didn't have the exact same insecurities that people around me did. And so, therefore, the things that would make them jealous did not make me jealous. There were other things that might make me jealous that they may or may not care about. But that's because, again, we are all unique, autonomous human beings with different experiences, different hopes and dreams and needs and desires. And so therefore, a singular little box to put everybody in doesn't work. And so, yes, people who are in polyamory are still going to deal with jealousy more or less. I will say that, in my 22 years of being in this community, I will say that I see it the most in couples who are newly opening up. So that means they were monogamous initially and they are kind of changing the rules of the game in the middle of the game to become polyamorous. That major shift in your relationship to where you are no longer kind of de facto guaranteed their time and attention because their time and attention are not going to other things. I have seen monogamous couples get jealous about, one spouse or the other has a new group of friends that they do things with frequently, or they have a new hobby that takes over a lot of their time. Any of those changes can cause jealousy. It is not just about, oh, well, if you have multiple partners, then you are going to experience an unnatural amount of jealousy, and it is going to be an excruciating struggle for you. That's just not it. But we are human beings. We do experience all of the emotions that other people do. What is different is how we respond to those things. Now, people in healthy monogamous relationships who experience jealousy because of friend groups, hobbies, new children, etc., they are going to be inspecting, why am I feeling jealous? In what ways can my partner reassure me without, constantly falling all over themselves to put me first in every single thing? You're going to have people who are scheduling. Ooh, Google Calendar maybe. And, okay, Thursday nights are girls' night. So we'll just set that expectation that going forward, I'm not going to be available on Thursday nights because that's girls' night. Or I have D&D every Sunday night. And so therefore, Sunday nights I will not be available because I have D&D. Or I am no longer able to get up and make you breakfast because I will have to be attending to the baby. But people make these changes for so many different things in their lives and their relationships. It is not just a polyamorous thing. And again, willfully ignorant of the ways in which this sort of thing plays out in his own life. Because clearly, in his life, it's good. In anybody else's life that is even a smidge different than his, not okay.
Because why is that? Well, it's important that the couples in open marriages or open relationships support each other. And supporting each other always means, in their world, bottling up your feelings while your spouse has one affair after another.
Okay. Again, absolutely not. What he is describing is poly under duress, which is cheating with extra steps. That is not what a healthy non-monogamous relationship looks like. That's not even ethical non-monogamy. Like it's just none of the above. It is something that in polyamorous circles we tell people explicitly, do not do this. You will harm your relationship. You will harm yourself. You will harm your partners. Don't do it. And unfortunately, in some cases, that means that the spouse who wants polyamory has a decision to make. Do I choose not to pursue polyamory and remain monogamous in this relationship because I am happiest with this partner? Or do I part ways with this partner because I am not able to fully be myself with this person, and therefore this relationship does not work for me? And yes, that is a choice. And it sucks when relationships have to end. It really does. And it sucks when you're not able to fully be yourself in a given relationship. But that is life. That is not just polyamory. That is life. What if you have a pair of spouses that are not particularly religious, but not particularly like staunch atheists or anything, and then one person gets in with a activity or hobby group and becomes very religious and therefore wants their partner to be very religious with them? That partner who is not happy with that change has a decision to make. Do they try to find a way so they can have a mixed faith marriage with as little dispute as possible? Do they capitulate to their other partner and pretend to be religious? Or do they end the relationship because they are not able to fully be themselves with someone who is super religious? So this is not just a polyamory thing. This is a human thing. And the way that he others people like this is so unhelpful.
Which is to say, supporting your spouse in this case means not being a human. It means not responding in a human, natural way to the fact that your spouse is serially unfaithful.
So, in my marriages, I was married twice. First time for 11 years, the second time for 7 years, and both times we were polyamorous the whole time. When we got together, we were polyamorous. It is explicitly me having separate relationships with other people concurrent to the relationship that I have with you. Understanding that the commitment that I have to you is no greater and no less based on whether or not I have committed relationships with other people. And I only on a couple of occasions in the 18 years that I was married had severe jealousy that required like a major meeting of the minds and really being both firm and direct about how I was feeling about things and the things that I needed going forward in order to make things work. With them having other partners, that typically for me was a nothing burger. It was really not a big deal. It was a big deal when a particular spouse, who shall remain nameless, messed up our Valentine's Day plans by overstaying their Valentine's Day plans with their other partner. That really didn't feel good to effectively get forgotten on Valentine's Day. Not so much because it's Valentine's Day, but because we had specific plans. And so to have plans fall through and get kind of ghosted for a couple of hours, not cool. Really not cool. But, it was only in those situations where there was a lack of respect for, the plans that you made with somebody. There was a lack of communication. These things were not met. And so I was able to respond to these situations with, hey, I get it. Sometimes you're really vibing and you kind of lose track of time. So next time, my request, I can't force you to do anything, but my request would be that you have some sort of reminder that pops up for you when it is getting close to a planned event with me. Whether that is, being home to have dinner, whether that is going to a concert together, whatever it might be more aware of that going forward. If there are going to be changes to plans, communicate about them. Simple asks. And, going forward from those things, I don't even want to say it was jealousy. It was more resentment and anger at my partner for failing to respect my time, to respect the plans that we had made. And again, taking this away from polyamory, the exact same thing could have happened if he was at, say, a Super Bowl party, or if they were at a family function. Things can change, plans can change, you can lose track of time. And it sucks to feel forgotten, regardless of whether you're polyamorous or monogamous. So this is not a unique problem to polyamory. It's just slightly different because sex is sometimes involved. So for the ace representation, it's not always there, but yeah. Again, all of these issues that he keeps trying to blame polyamory with is simply, this person is not living the way that I want them to live. And so therefore, it does not matter what they want, does not matter what makes them happy. It does not matter what conforms to their values. It only matters that they are different and quote unquote weird to me. And so I'm going to crusade against them. And he talks about, this serial adultery. Non-religious people can cheat on one another as well, but he's absolutely, specifically speaking, in, like, you made a commitment to God to only sleep with this one person for the rest of your lives. And I'm happy that he has a faith that is authentic to himself, that represents the values and the relationship markers, milestones, and connections that are important to him. That's great. But he is not everyone. And he just simply cannot abide anyone who behaves differently.
Now, if you're wondering, though, what this kind of support looks like in practice, here's a video from a popular polyamory TikTok account called Remodeled Love. And in the video, we see what is apparently a husband gushing over his wife's latest boyfriend. Unfortunate choice of words there, perhaps, but anyway.
Why you gotta make it weird, Matt?
What I was just saying is that this man gets it, okay? Because you are a catch. And he makes an effort. He puts intentionality into his communication. He comments on your posts and your stuff. He makes plans. He wants to be around. He's proactive. He's got a great attitude just in general. And he's just a delight to be around. And you deserve someone. And he's a pretty great lover apparently as well. So these are all of the things that you've been wanting. And I'm just telling Stargazer here over text that while you've had a lot of great partners, there's always been crucial pieces of intentionality missing, but this man gets it.
Now, if you didn't know any better,
that is so wholesome and adorable. I absolutely love these polycules on TikTok that get to show some of these behind the scenes things that happen very commonly for polycules. The absolute delight that I have had in watching my partners have other fulfilling connections. A little thing called compersion. Compersion is not something that everyone feels. It's not something that everyone feels all the time. It's, just like jealousy, it varies from person to person. I have been lucky enough to experience a lot of compersion. And so when my spouses had other partners, they were generally lovely people, and I enjoyed spending time with them, when we were just kind of hanging out. And I could see the value and the joy that they brought to my partner's life. And so, therefore, I was happy because my partner was happy. Similar to, again, pulling this away from polyamory. If they had a new hobby or intramural sports that they were doing, there's so many different things that bring joy to various people's lives and that will take away time and attention from their primary partner. And so you've just got so many different things that you can feel compersion about. It's not just in polyamory. But compersion is kind of like the gold medal in polyamory. If you're hitting levels of compersion and you're able to have your initial reaction to your partner gushing about their other partner as a bit of compersion rather than, say, comparison, and you can just be happy that they are happy, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it really sucks that Matt's gonna say it's this terrible, awful thing that clearly isn't real.
And you saw that video, you would think that this was the woman's gay best friend and not her husband. And then when you're told the context, you realize that your original assumption was still basically correct for all.
Dude, seriously? No, like, fellas, is it gay to be happy that your wife is happy? Apparently, according to Matt Walsh. No, it does not make you gay or not sexually interested in your partner because you're happy that they are happy with other partners. That doesn't change your sexual orientation. Just saying. But it's, like I said, I knew he was going to shit on it and say that it was this horrible thing. But yeah, he disappoints at every turn.
All intents and purposes. Now, you may be asking yourself, are any of these people actually happy living this way? Because again, if you're a normal person and you see all this and you hear all this, you think, well, that just sounds totally miserable. Like, that sounds...
I'm sorry, what about that video, that adorable, wholesome video from the poly couple? It makes it seem like they're miserable. They both seem very happy. And the people that were in the articles, they sounded very happy. He gets so bent out of shape that people can actually be happy making life choices that are not ones that he would make for himself. There is a complete inability. Like, this man, if there is anyone who is absolutely incapable of compersion, it is Matt Walsh.
It's like a walking nightmare, a waking nightmare every single day. Who would want to live this way? That polyamorous quintuple that we talked about at the start of the monologue, they did their best to appear happy. And then a few months later, one of them landed in jail for nearly beating the woman's 5-month-old child to death.
That, again, is not a poly thing. Obviously, the guy was miserable. A lot of people with newborns are miserable because it's rough to get through that first year. It is rough. And I can only imagine that Matt doesn't understand this because he has done the typical fundy husband thing where he is completely detached from child rearing. So he was not the one who was losing sleep at night. He was not the one who was feeding the baby in the middle of the night. He was not the one changing diapers in the middle of the night. He was sleeping soundly while his wife took care of it. So obviously, he would not be able to understand that.
The guy in that video we just played a moment ago is trying his best to appear happy and quote-unquote supportive. But if you listen to these people speak for longer than 20 seconds, which is not an easy task, I admit, you'll find that their deep, profound unhappiness eventually comes seeping through, and soon it's the only thing you can see when you look at them. So the facade of happiness lasts for about 20 seconds, and then if you listen for longer than that, all the rest of it is, dear God, we are desperately unhappy. Indeed, even in these propaganda pieces meant to promote polyamory, still the majority of the word count is devoted to explaining how the participants deal with their resentment and jealousy. So jealousy, by their own account, is an ever-present feature of their lives.
No, It is an ever-present feature of their lives because we are human, and humans feel jealousy throughout their life for various scenarios. Yes, they are going to talk about the difficulties in these articles, in these posts and whatnot. That's the point. You're not up there to put on just the highlight reel. The point of these articles is to try and have a well-rounded understanding of these people's lives. And most monogamous people are going to look at a polycule and have so many questions. The very first one that I have heard out of like 99% of people who are not polyamorous is, oh my gosh, I could never do that. I'd be too jealous. So, of course, that's the first thing that comes up. Why? Because that's the first question people like Matt ask us. And so we have all kinds of, prepared responses because we have to answer this question so often. And our answer is going to be realistic in most cases to say, yes, I do feel jealousy from time to time. It is something that we work through. Whenever we hit a point where, I'm feeling really triggered and jealous and my insecurities are popping up, this is what we do. Like radar meetings, for example, we follow that format to work through how we're feeling, what we need, and how we can improve going forward. He just cannot fathom that people who experience jealousy and have a way to address it, but it's not permanently fixed for their whole life, and so they'll periodically have to revisit that. That doesn't mean that you are miserable in your life. All of this feels like so much projection. Like, Matt, are you okay? Having issues? Perhaps? I don't know.
Now, that's not the case in a healthy monogamous relationship. Okay, in a healthy monogamous marriage, which is to say a real marriage, jealousy really shouldn't even come up.
Oh my God. Okay, so refer back to the beginning of this video where I talk about how jealousy and FOMO and stuff like that are not just polyamorous things. There's lots of different things that people can feel jealous about. There's lots of different things in people's lives that do not involve sex that would cause their partner to feel jealous. And I guarantee you, if his wife ever got a friend that took up a lot of her time or that she talked about a lot, guarantee you that would trigger jealousy in Matt. Guarantee you. This man is like the world's fragilest little snowflake, and he would absolutely melt if he was not given ultimate deference and ultimate control of the people around him.
If you trust your spouse is faithful, nothing to be jealous about.
But again, that's not how it works. Trust is a difficult thing, especially if you have had childhood trauma, attachment trauma, you've been cheated on in previous relationships. That trust is hard to come by, and you're not necessarily going to be able to completely fix the jealousy that pops up whenever your partner doesn't respond to your text message fast enough. It is not only a real marriage if there is no jealousy. That is forcing people to be not human. That is forcing people to repress their humanity. Make it make sense, dude.
But in these people's lives, it's just every single second of the day. But they have their ways of explaining that away. So back to the New York Magazine article again, briefly. Quote, celebrating your lover while they marry their partner, while supporting your lover's lover's lover while they go through it, is an example of what Anna calls living life on hard mode. There's a real sense of connection that I think comes from doing hard things. And I'm someone who loves to do hard things, Sarah explains further. Some people like to run marathons. We like to do polyamory, complex relationship stuff. Sarah's favorite activity for the two of us to do is couples therapy, Nick says, smiling. Navigating the relationship dynamics is kind of generally a fun thing for us. It's like for relationship nerds. There's a lot of different puns you could make, and Sarah talking about.
Again, dude, why you gotta make it gross? Why you gotta make it gross? Like, there was absolutely no need to make that comment. This man is permanently 12 years old. I swear to fucking God.
She likes to do hard things, but we're not going to get into that. And this is another tangent I'm not going to get into right now again, but here's more proof that most therapists are completely useless. I mean, these two are apparently seeing a couples therapist like recreationally.
Dude, that was absolutely a tongue-in-cheek kind of joke thing. Yes, couples therapy is phenomenal with a good therapist, and finding ones who are not just affirming of polyamorous relationships, but actually like experienced with handling polyamorous relationships, those are hard to come by. So if this couple can find one, I would absolutely be sticking with them, making sure I'm always on their calendar because I don't want to get put on a wait list again. His latest crusade against psychotherapy is just insane. And I mean, I don't mean that to like disparage mental health terms, but he completely represses that concept that he has negative feelings, negative traits, etc. that should be addressed. He makes this presumption that going to therapy is just having a yes man. Not the current therapist I'm with, but the previous one that I was with. She's amazing. She helped me find my current one. It was just an insurance change that necessitated I move from one to the next. But she would occasionally be like, okay, I hear what you're saying, and I want to challenge you on something. Are you prepared to hear a challenge? And I would always like, hit me with it. Come on, I want to hear it. And so she would propose a different way to look at something, a different perspective, or just something different from the way that I was talking about something, the way that I was processing something. And it was always really helpful because I absolutely appreciate constructive criticism. Like, if I am doing something poorly, if I say something I shouldn't, if I have a presumption that needs to go away, I want to be challenged on that. I want to flex the brain muscle and learn to understand another perspective. And that is hard work. That's not something that everybody finds interesting. That, based on how my therapist always couched those "can I challenge you" statements, it was obvious that a lot of people are not very open to that kind of thing. I think there is definitely a type of person who enjoys working on themselves, who enjoy learning new communication tools and skills and practicing those skills in new and different ways. I probably I hadn't heard that term before, but I probably would describe myself as a relationship nerd. I have always had my, primary goal in life is to have amazing connections with other people. And being able to understand all kinds of different people helps me have amazing connections with a wide variety of people. And I greatly appreciate all of the different things that wide variety of people bring to my life. And it's sad, honestly, that people like Matt, for whatever reason, can't bring themselves to have that same kind of desire for self-improvement or self-awareness or ability to critique oneself. It's really sad. that he's not able to do that, or he refuses to do that. In his case, I think it is a refusal. Doesn't fit in his small box, and it makes him too dysregulated to consider expanding that box even a little bit.
And this couples therapist has, we can assume, given them advice that does not include stop engaging in serial adultery.
Most likely because that wouldn't fix the problem.
So they are a couple that is constantly in a state of adultery, and they're going to a couples therapist. And given the fact that they keep going back to the therapist, we can assume the therapist has never once said to them, you know, one thing that can make things better for you guys, stop having sex with people that are not each other.
Now, any therapist worth their salt, if they are talking to a polyamorous couple and one or the other partner is very uncomfortable with polyamory, is feeling pressured and coerced into a polyamorous relationship, they will tell them, look, you know, you are harming your partner. Your partner is not on board for this. So they are doing things without fully consenting to them. And that's not okay. You have to have consent. And so, again, any therapist worth their salt would respond to that by telling the couple to, you know, very seriously reconsider if polyamory is what they want to do as a couple. Is it going to work for them? Because polyamory is absolutely not for everyone. Just like marriage is not for everyone. Just like having kids is not for everyone. Just like going to college is not for everyone. Just like going to a specific denomination of church is not for everyone. We all make choices based on our beliefs and values and desires and hopes and dreams and fears and needs. And those things are going to be different from person to person. And that's part of why you bring in a therapist, because you're not going to be exactly like your partner. You're going to have different histories. You're going to have different thought processes. You're going to have different self-image. And so having that unbiased third party to look from the outside in and engage you in discussing your issues, it's important to make sure that that is a personalized process and that it's not this chucklefuck's little, you know, one size fits all.
But aside from the fact that therapy is so often a scam, what we see here is the familiar attempt to paint sin and failure and selfishness as complexity. Their open marriage is making them both miserable, but that's only because it's hard, you know, and it's hard in the same way that running a marathon is hard, they say. And the analogy is interesting because, of course, running a marathon is exactly what they are not doing. Okay, a monogamous marriage can much more accurately be compared to a marathon. Now, I don't really like that comparison because a marathon to me just seems totally miserable from start to finish.
So then why are you going to talk about a comparison that you can't connect with? Since obviously everything that you can't connect with is wrong and sinful and evil and objectively harmful. Like, pick a metaphor that you like, dude. Okay, so how is monogamy more like a marathon than polyamory? I'm gonna bet like $50 that he brings up commitment,
Which marriage is not, but at least marathons take commitment and perseverance. And those are the two things that polyamorous people absolutely avoid at all costs. Being polyamorous isn't hard in the sense that marathons are hard. These kind of relationships are hard in the sense that it's hard to be a heroin addict, you know, in the sense that it's hard to be a pathological liar because you have to keep up with all the lies. It's hard not because you're taking on a challenge or you're doing something difficult but worthwhile, but because you are a weak person.
Wow, dude. Okay, so polyamorous people do remain committed. I mean, obviously not all polyamorous people are interested or aiming for long-term relationships, but a lot of us are. Like I said, I was married for 18 out of the 22 years that I have been polyamorous, and I was incredibly committed to those marriages. I hung on to those marriages longer than was really healthy, partly because I wanted to make sure that I was honoring that commitment, that I was doing absolutely everything I could to try and make it work, to try and, resolve the issues that we were having. And it was only after I could show myself that I had tried absolutely everything that I was open to dissolution of the marriage. And I really don't think that anyone can ask any more than that as far as commitment goes. Because if you want to talk about monogamy somehow being magically more committed than polyamory, let's remember that Christians have the highest divorce rate at this point. Atheists are getting divorced at a lower rate these days. While there had been a bit of an increase year over year in divorces from, the 70s when no-fault divorce was enacted through, the 2010s, as we got to closer and closer to 2020, people were staying together more often. The divorce rate was dipping. And this is, again, not something that is just a polyamory versus monogamy issue. People in monogamous relationships have this security theater akin to taking off your shoes at the airport. You can be in this monogamous relationship and we're going to be together forever, and they're never going to do anything that will make me feel insecure, blah, 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 because we're perfectly committed. They still break up. They still get divorced. Like, there's no magic in any particular relationship style that is going to guarantee that two people remain together and committed in the same way for their entire lives. And so by saying, I'm less likely to get divorced because I'm monogamous, that's security theater. It's a facade of security. There is no actual guarantee that you're not going to get divorced simply because you are living out a God-honoring marriage. There are certainly people like my parents who are happily married, 45? I think 45 years in. There are those. But there are also polyamorous people who've been polyamorous for decades and they're still together. So it has nothing to do with the particular relationship format, the relationship structure. It's all about kind of a luck of the draw. Are you able to grow together in roughly the same way at roughly the same rate for the entirety of your adult lives? If you can make that work, that is amazing. You deserve massive kudos because that is truly hard. And to claim that polyamory is anything like struggling with an addiction or a narcissistic behavior trait like pathological lying, I mean, come on. He's fully out of pocket at this point. He's, made giant leaps to get to the points that he's making now. And wow, we still have 5 minutes, huh? Okay.
Following your most base desires, entirely unwilling to control your urges or strive for virtue. That's the kind of hard we're talking about.
Okay. People have different values. People have different needs. People have different desires. Not everybody strives for exclusivity. That is not a virtue for everyone. I'm with you because I'm stuck with you is what I hear more often than not. And that doesn't sound happy. That doesn't sound healthy. That's not something I want to strive for. If I'm looking at either of my marriages, like I said, I stuck it out and I tried everything I possibly could. And when all of those things failed, my value of honoring my needs, of honoring the respect that I deserve, those things were higher on the values for me than exclusivity. And obviously, that is, unique to me. Not everybody is going to have the same structure of values, but that's why a one size fits all doesn't actually fit all.
You know, your life is hard not because you're doing hard things, but because you refuse to do hard things. It is hard in the way that it's hard to be weak, not in the way that it's hard to be strong.
So what I'm getting here is his marriage is incredibly difficult because remaining faithful to his wife is a hard thing to do. To repress his base instincts to go after other, I would assume, women, is difficult. That does not sound like a relationship that I would want to be in. So, I mean, hopefully Alyssa likes it. What's hard for one person is not going to be hard for any other given person. We're all going to have different challenges in our lives and things that are a struggle for us. We are all autonomous human beings. And, I fully accept the consequences of being a polyamorous person. There's a lot of people that won't want to date me because I'm polyamorous, and they are not. And so that is a natural consequence of me being polyamorous, is I have a smaller dating pool. That doesn't mean that there aren't quality people around me to date. It just means that it's a smaller pool. It's a little bit more difficult to find someone who matches up with my relationship structure and values and needs and all that stuff. And then add on top of that being queer and trans, and you just keep shrinking that pool. And yet, I have a thriving community around me, both online and in person, to where I have so many people that wouldn't necessarily be people that I date, but they are quality people that I can have various types of connection with. As someone on the asexual spectrum, I just don't need a sexual relationship all the time. My priorities for what are meaningful connections are going to be different from someone like Matt, who is clearly driven by having a sexual relationship that he can call all his. If that's what he's got with Alyssa, then, good on you, dude. But stop pushing all this insecurity on other people.
Those are very different kinds of difficulty. And the difference is that there is no true happiness, there's no true joy available at the other end of the difficulties that you are experiencing as weak and unfaithful people. Unlike if you are strong and virtuous and trying to be committed and faithful and a good spouse, there's hardships and difficulties that come in that sense in family life. But at the other end of it is immense joy. Whereas with this kind of hardship and difficulty, at the other end of it is just more hardship and difficulty. So a monogamous marriage, which is to say, again, a real marriage, will have hardships, sure. You're not going to be on cloud nine every moment of the day until death do you part. That's just not reality. But there is immense joy available to you if you both work for it. In the case of the non-monogamous marriage, the open relationship, which is to say the fake marriage, there's no joy ever available. The most you could hope for is momentary pleasure, which is something you could have gotten in monogamy as well. So there's nothing you can get out of it that's good that you couldn't have gotten with a real marriage.
Wow, dude. Wow. I would not have kept doing this for 22 years if there was not immense joy on the other side of that work. I would not still be in therapy if there was not immense joy and fulfillment and accomplishment on the other side of that hard work. It's just not joy that he is willing to acknowledge exists. The only joy is a joy that he can experience.
Lots of bad stuff that you will get out of it that you would not have gotten out of it had you had a real marriage.
Now, keep in mind, he is going to say that a real marriage is also heterosexual, so his concept of what joy is so small.
In a real marriage, in a monogamous marriage, you could have had the pleasure and the joy if you had had the discipline and integrity to go get it. So there's no doubt.
It takes discipline and integrity to be ethically non-monogamous. You have to be committed to being open and honest and to fulfill the commitments that you make. They are not going to be necessarily commitments of exclusivity. They're going to be different kinds of commitments, but they are commitments nonetheless. If you have a polyamorous person who just runs around and does whatever the fuck they want and doesn't care about their partner's feelings or respecting people, those people get pushed out of the community pretty quickly because we're like, look, you're just using people and none of us are here for that. There's an awful lot of dickish people who will claim to be polyamorous, but it's only polyamorous for them because God forbid their partners ever ask to have other partners, and then suddenly they melt down and their world is ending because only they are allowed to have this freedom and non-exclusivity. So those people are pretty apparent pretty quick, and those of us who have been in the community longer will absolutely warn the people who are newer to the community about those people. Similar to being in the BDSM community, if you have bad doms and stuff like that, everyone talks. And so if there's someone who's out there being a real asshole all the time, people will get warned about them. Not that Matt would know anything about this, but this happens in communities of women as well. If there are particular guys that go around and they're complete assholes to their partners, girls are going to let other girls know, hey, I would be careful with him. Because with this, and this girl, he did this, and this thing. And we don't think that's cool. And so we just want to give you a heads up. Miss me with this bullshit as if, we're just running around doing whatever feels good in the moment. We're not worried about future consequences or repercussions. And good God, that is not it at all.
That these non-monogamous groupings are full of absolutely miserable, self-hating, jealousy-riddled people trying to find a way to be happy in an arrangement that churns out nothing but despair and anxiety every single day. That's the reality for the poor fools on the ground who are trying to actually live like this, trying to live like beasts instead of human beings, like cats instead of people. And by the way, by focusing on the unhappiness of the adults involved, I don't mean to suggest that their suffering is the most dire side effect or consequence of polyamory. No, I mean, as we saw at the top, by far the worst thing is the untold misery and trauma and abuse and worse suffered by the children who are brought.
Which is not a function of polyamory. They are not abused because their parents are polyamorous. They are abused because they are with abusers.
Brought into and brought up in these chaotic, degenerate, and dysfunctional environments. So as always, children are the real victims here.
Okay. You want to talk about chaotic? Let's look at missionary families who uproot their kids on a regular basis, frequently, in order to move to new places, and you're not able to connect with friends that you had in the previous place, and so you're starting over with a brand new batch of friends every 6 to 12 months. Like, that is instability. Or children of emotionally immature parents, where the children have to help co-regulate their parents' emotional and mental states. I would hazard a guess that everybody around Matt has to do a good deal of co-regulating to keep him from flying off the handle at whoever.
But what about the elites who are pushing this? I mean, what do they get out of it? Why has the media jumped on board the polyamory train all?
It's 3 articles, dude. 3. That's it. How is that an agenda being pushed? But I don't know, me simply existing is both pushing an agenda and grooming children, according to Matt.
At once with such coordination? Well, because this is the next step in the destruction of the nuclear family. Some of us conservatives, not enough of us, but some of us, predicted 10 years ago that this is where it would all lead. You know, after Obergefell,
Oh my God.
there are some of us who said, this is what's happening next.
It is not a slippery slope. Polyamory is not a new thing. Polyamory has existed pretty much forever. Why are you like this? Like, who hurt you? I want to know. Gay people getting married does not lead to people becoming polyamorous. People were already polyamorous. Just like gay people getting legally married didn't mean that long-term committed partnerships between gay couples didn't exist before then. There are people who are in their 80s and 90s who were in long-term committed relationships with a same-sex partner. Decades before it was actually legal to marry that person. Decades before it was even legal for them to be with that person. They faced the threat of imprisonment, torture, like they risked all of these things to have this long-term committed partnership. And that apparently isn't hard work with joy at the end, according to him, because, you know, gay marriages aren't real marriages. I can only assume that this is either a big externalization of all of his insecurities, and or he is being intentionally rage baiting because it gets him clicks. The same reason why the New York Times and other outlets have articles about trans people in sports, polyamorous couples. Like, they are doing things that are exciting and will drive clicks to their website. I fail to see how any of his bullshit is one iota different from that at all. Other than the fact that a lot of these other journalists are actually legitimately interested in these irregular situations. They're not coming to it as I need to make this into a boogeyman. Because that's what he's on to now. Is to show that, oh, see, I told you this evil was gonna happen, so you need to listen to me about the transgender people because I'm warning you about them just the same way that I was warning everybody about polyamory, and I guarantee you he's gonna bring up bestiality after, you know, legalizing gay marriage. So, okay.
And it's happening. We said that the assault on marriage would not simply end there. It would continue to the next destination. Of course, we were laughed at and we were accused of engaging in a slippery slope fallacy. But as always, it turned out that the slope was as slippery as we said. And the only thing fallacious about it are the arguments presented by the people who are trying to expand the definition of marriage into oblivion. So that's what.
So I'm guessing he wants the biblical version. So is that the couple who are married based on an arranged marriage between their parents in order to secure a political agreement? Would this be the sexual assaulter and his victim being forced to marry? Is that the definition that you're looking for? Is it the man and his wife and his however many concubines and slaves? Is that the definition you're looking for? Because I'm pretty sure you want what you call a biblical definition of marriage, and that is so many different arrangements, most of which that are illegal at this point because they involve a fair amount of non-consent.
Now, don't give us too much credit for being right, though. Like, it didn't take a prophet or a genius to see this coming. The marital union has two essential dimensions. It is fundamentally, in principle, procreative, and it is monogamous and committed.
See? It's procreative. So it's just about us being animals creating new generations of people. It's not about love and finding fulfillment in this partnership that I'm sure he would call like sinful and selfish and whatever. No, it's got to be this procreative, lifelong, committed thing simply for the purpose of being procreative and committed, not for any other reason. So I guess infertile people have to get divorces.
Once they waged an assault on one dimension, it was only a matter of time before they moved on to the next. And it really didn't even matter which one they started with. Because
I'm sorry, but he's trying to say that gay marriage goes against the procreative nature of real marriage. But infertile people have existed since the beginning of man. Like, he's never had a stink about infertile couples being able to be married. He's never made a stink about postmenopausal women remaining married. Like, I'm sure he wants his wife to stay with him after she achieves menopause. I mean, I hope. But this is just, ew, dude. Ew.
the end result is the same. So wherever it began, we know where they want it to end, with the death of the family, which has always been the number one enemy and the greatest of all threats to the leftist elites who run our country. They cannot enact their agenda and exercise total control over a culture that is comprised of strong, loving, individual family units where children are raised by caring mothers and protective fathers. They cannot control. If that's the way society is set up,
I'm sorry, buddy, but you really sound like the one who has the control issues here. Acknowledging and respecting that not every family has a caring mother and a protective father, Is this lumberjack look of yours intended to portray the fact that you are a protective father? Like, is that what you find your identity in? Because that's kind of sad. Just saying, you should be able to be uniquely you and find value in that. You shouldn't have to live up to an arbitrary, artificial standard in order to see yourself as good. Like, the self-talk in this guy's head has got to be just an absolute nightmare. I cannot imagine. I mean, I can kind of imagine because I've struggled with self-worth and self-love and stuff like that. Gotten way, way better since it's going through, extensive therapy, but we know he'll never do that. Because then he would be admitting that he is a weak person. And I'm sorry, but there is nothing strong about denying other people the right to be themselves, the right to have their own definitions for what is fulfilling for them. I mean, the way he makes it sound is, no woman could possibly be fulfilled by being anything other than a mother. No man could possibly be fulfilled by being anything other than a protective father. That's so regressive and restrictive and punitive even, because how dare someone have the audacity to be even an iota different? Because according to him, that iota of difference starts a slippery slope, and somehow that's valid and not just a logical fallacy.
There's nothing they could do. The elites, for all their money and power, would be rendered nearly impotent if that's the kind of society we had, which is why they have to tear down the family and have been trying to do so for many decades. And tragically, they have largely succeeded. They have succeeded anyway on a general level. But I can tell you they have not torn down my family, and they never will. And hopefully they haven't torn down yours either. Whatever you do, don't let them.
Oh my god, dude. The sky is falling, Chicken Little. Like, wow. Okay, so in summation here, polyamorous people are not that different from monogamous people. The struggles that they have are very similar to struggles that monogamous people have. They're struggles that can be experienced in a number of different ways. It reminds me of the people who say that, you'll never know true selfless love until you have a child. And that's just, no. I mean, I could say similarly that you don't know true selfless love until you have had a partner who is permanently disabled. I mean, how else would you know how to be a caregiver and to accept and respect and support the disability of your partner, their physical or mental incapability of fulfilling certain things that maybe they did early in the relationship, or perhaps it's something they have never been able to do, but you would typically expect of your partner. How do you handle that? But no, that's not how it is. There are a number of ways in our life that we can experience true love. There's a number of ways in our life that we can experience hardship that has joy on the other end of it. He talks about running a marathon. I happen to be a long distance runner back in the day before physical disability took over. And I would absolutely say that running a marathon, well, I ran half marathons because I was young. Running long distance definitely takes commitment. It also takes a deep awareness of your body. What is your breathing like? What are your muscles feeling? What's the weather like? Is the weather changing? So many things that you have to kind of like keep up in your head as you go, because you can't just turn around and have a quick 5-minute run back home. I used to on the weekends do a 12-mile loop, and obviously that takes a while. So if I was close to the turnaround point and shit went down, I had a long run to go. And this was before cell phones were ubiquitous. They were still really expensive and hardly anybody had them. So it wasn't like I could just, call an Uber, call a friend, call my mom. I would have to walk to someplace that had a phone so I could call. Try to flag somebody down on the road and have them take me somewhere and hope that I got a good person who pulls over. There's a great many comparisons that I can draw with that. But I think the main one is just that 12-mile run is going to be different for everybody. For me, it was fun. For me, it was the best way to handle my anxiety, anger, etc., clear my head. But for others, like Matt, it sounds like torture from start to finish. And so he would be the bitch baby at the back, constantly complaining, can't we turn around now? Can't we turn around now? Can't we turn around now? I don't want to do this anymore. Well, you know what? You have a choice. You don't have to do this. So if polyamory is not your kind of marathon, don't do it. If monogamy is not your kind of marathon, don't do it. We are autonomous people, and choices like polyamory versus monogamy, having children versus not having children, all of those things are morally neutral. You're not going to cause the end of the world by choosing one or the other. You're not going to secure the, continuation of the world by picking one or the other. Nothing is guaranteed. Do what matches your values, your beliefs, your needs, your desires, your hopes, your dreams, your fears, and find people who want to go on that journey with you and enjoy the journey. Because it's always a journey, as much as Matt wants to say it's not. All right, I think I have pontificated on Matt Walsh for enough to last me at least another month or so before I need to check on his Twitter. God. Oh, I'm such a masochist. Keep eyes peeled for our next regularly scheduled cast episode, and I would love to see your thoughts in the comments on this video. So tip tap away and let me know what you think.